How's it going?
Good.
Good. Hey, Michael Burdick. How's it
Hey,
going?
Ora. Here in New Zealand got a couple cases yesterday.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Pandy. I like the pandy. All right.
Oh,
All right. So people are still coming in. Patrick, can you make me a co-host?
Yes.
Zap your co-host.
Thank you. Then I have control. It's all about control.
I like the dog.
that's an illusion. You have no control.
Hey now. Okay, Mr. Lomrim. Thank you. Thanks for the reminder. Always good. Okay, so welcome everybody to our last class of this series. So what we're going to do tonight is review the things that we talked about last week about how to set up some of the pointers about how to set up a daily practice. And then we're going to look at a more traditional way of kind of orienting ourselves, organizing a daily practice, and go through a quite traditional daily practice that you may or may not want to do the whole thing. You may want to incorporate parts of it into your daily practice. So that's our idea for tonight. Plus, hopefully at the end, we'll have time for any kind of last questions that you might have. We've been spending most of our time talking about the obstacles, the antidotes, how to set up a daily practice. So we'll go through this very traditional practice and then just see if there's any questions at the end. But let's start first by just settling in. So getting yourself in your comfortable posture with your back straight, your shoulders even, your head tilted slightly forward, your eyes gazing down the plane of your nose, your tongue on the roof of your mouth right behind your teeth. Your hands can be resting in your lap or on your thighs. And you might be sitting down on a cushion, cross-legged, or up in a chair on a sofa, trying to make sure that you've got that nice straight back and that upright posture, no matter where it is that you're sitting. And then let's take a moment to just scan through the body just to see if there's any tightness or tension or constriction in the body. So starting at the crown of the head and turning your attention through the body, through the face, the area around the eyes, the jaw, just making sure that we're alert yet completely relaxed. The neck and shoulders, relaxing through the torso, getting that nice upright posture, lifting the chest, opening up the sternum, relaxing the belly, relaxing the buttocks, relaxing the legs all the way down to the feet. And then we'll round off this initial settling of the body with 3 deep breaths. So deep diaphragmatic inhalation, deep exhalation 3 times, and that activates the soothing system of the body. And then let's just turn to the ordinary sensations of the breath in the body. And by now you might know where it's easiest to keep your attention, whether it's that wide angle focus of the full body awareness of breathing without really following the breath up and down, but just widening the lens and just attending to the entire body. Or perhaps it's easier for you to localize the focus, maybe the diaphragm, maybe the chest, the lungs expanding and contracting, maybe the nostrils, the sensation of the air going in and out of the nostrils. And then just keeping your attention there. And when you get distracted by a thought or another sense object, just releasing the distraction and returning to the breath. And just releasing and returning. Using the sensations of the breath to just arrive in the present moment in your body. And then let's take a moment to set our motivation for our class together this evening. And it may be that you've had a motivation that's carried you through the last 6 weeks, or a motivation even more broadly than this class for your spiritual practice as a whole, or it may be something very specific that brought you to this class, or maybe even to this evening. Just tuning in to your motivation, to what brought you here, what you're hoping to get out of our time together tonight. And then, in addition to our personal motivations, let's try to generate an altruistic intention for our time together tonight, thinking, may my spiritual practice benefit not just me, bring me peace of mind and freedom from suffering, of course, that's what I want, but also be of benefit to all living beings. So generating that altruistic intention for our practice and our time together tonight. Okay. So before we start with the traditional practice and the pieces of that practice, I just wanted to take a moment to review what we talked about last time. We were talking about basically what some of the key features of setting up a daily practice. So I'm going to share my screen again, and let's just review that list that we were looking at last time. So keys to setting up a meditation practice, the same time in the same place. And so one of the things that we're really looking at doing is trying to get into new good habits. And so if we set up a place that's a consistent place that we do our meditation practice. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second when I introduce the traditional kind of structure of the practice, and then the same time. And we notice if it's approximately the same time every day, your mind just expects to be kind of subdued, and you're already starting a little bit ahead of the game with your mind kind of ready, starts to be subdued, especially the association with the place where you meditate. It just gives you kind of a head start rather than doing, I mentioned a friend of mine who would just wander around the house with his cushion at random times of day. And then he wondered why his meditation practice wasn't going so well, right? It wasn't any habit. It was just like, oh, when I'm in the mood, I'll just do it. Where do I feel like doing it now? Unfortunately, that level of spontaneity doesn't really help when we're trying to set up a consistent practice. And then every day, or realistically, at least 5 times a week. And don't make the mistake that some people do of, oh, I'm really busy during the week because I'm working so much. I'll just meditate for 3 hours on Sunday when I have time. It doesn't really work out that way. I haven't gone to the gym in a very long time, but it's said that working out a little bit every day is better than going and working out for 3 or 4 hours once a week. You're just going to be sore and exhausted. And it's kind of the same thing with your meditation practice. So short time periods more frequently is better than trying to do these marathons once a week. You're not really going to progress very much. The morning can be good, but again, it's very, very individual. I suggest the morning. I find for myself before I've started interacting, before I've talked to people. And if you live with other people, and I've done this before in times when I've shared housing situations, if people know if it's really early in the morning and I haven't meditated yet and I'm just making my first cup of tea in the kitchen, don't talk to me. Like, we're not going to get into a big conversation until everybody in the house has done their practice. And so that's something you might want to set up if you live with other people, some kind of signal of not doing a lot of talking, because then it's really harder for your mind to subdue when you've gotten kind of stirred up with a lot of conversation. The evening is also okay. And for some people, they're night owls. And the evening is, when they feel the most energized, and they're not energized in the morning at all. So again, these are just very general guidelines about the time of day, but it's adjustable to your own situation. And then not doing it on a full stomach or when you're tired. So kind of picking the optimal time. So that was what we talked about last time. And then we had another slide. I won't go through the whole thing, that was particularly for people doing meditation retreats. And it was about these conducive circumstances for retreat, like finding a comfortable place where things are easy to get, reducing your wants, and activities. And these are some of the things that, like I was mentioning, even if we're not in a strict meditation retreat, if we're trying to develop something like a contemplative life, we might want to look at, I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment. We might want to look at setting up our life to be a little bit more conducive to going inward, right? And just simplifying. A lot of people I notice when they start with a regular meditation practice, just very naturally, it's not like you're trying so hard. Oh, I have to be a yogi now. I'm going to get rid of all my stuff. But it's just sort of this natural simplification process that a lot of people do, not only physical, possessions, but also a lot of activities, and just sort of streamlining and simplifying. And this can really, really help support our practice. It's really hard if you're trying to develop a settled, focused mind to meditate for 20 minutes or half an hour, and then the other 23 and a half hours, so you're just out of control completely and distracting yourself like crazy. It's not really going to work. So setting up the rest of your life in a supportive way. So any questions about that? That's by way of reviewing what we were talking about last time, but I wanted to just see if there are any kind of leftover questions, or for some of you who've been trying, and meditating for a while and been at this for a while, if you have any insights or tips that you'd like to offer to some of the others. Okay.
Crickets.
Crickets. Say more, Jenny.
I have a suggestion for me. It's helpful to spend as much time as I can in guided meditations.
Yes.
And fingers crossed, it leaks onto me being on the cushion and by myself.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And like we were mentioning last week at Land of Medicine Buddha, and now there's so much online, but even here, there's a Sunday morning practice, a Monday night practice that you can join online. There's so many retreats online now. So even people who've never done a lot of guided meditation, there's so many incredible opportunities. And that's another thing too for retreats that's helpful. And I've heard the advice, do a group retreat the first time you do a meditation retreat, not to go off into a cabin by yourself for a week. And then I've had so many people think that they're going to do this hardcore thing. And then they get into the cabin, they got their food, they're all excited, they're set up, and then they sit down and go, oh my God, what do I do now? Right? They don't have enough instruction and support. So it is really helpful. And there's been a lot of online retreats too. I have a friend who did a week-long, 7 a.m. till 9 p.m. on Zoom. I mean, to me, I was like, that just sounds like torture. But she said, there's enough breaks and all of that. And there are a lot of opportunities to do things like retreats, or like Patrick said, just, get really used to being guided through until you're very familiar with how to do the practices. Yeah. Thanks, Patrick.
I was just gonna say it's about the guiding, but then there's also something about what happens for me anyway, meditating with other people, like the power and comes through. So I'm reminded about how much I want to do the meditation. Some sort of, it still happens online, but some sort of community strength, I feel it. So.
Yeah. And we're going to talk in a minute about the practice of refuge. And we have this practice in Buddhism, and we talk about taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and then Sangha, or the spiritual community. And this is the one that I think gets really shortchanged for us, especially this American cultural thing of being hyper independent and like, no, I'm just going to do my thing by myself, like, forget it. And we don't, value spiritual community, I think, as much as would be really helpful for us if we did, right? And so I love that you mentioned that it's that too, not just learning and guidance, but actually having that community and that collective energy behind it. Yeah. Michael, you were nodding a lot and you've done a lot of practice. Do you have any, I'm just going to call you out. Yes. Do you have anything that you want to share about your practice? And
No, your suggestions are good. I do recommend, what resonated for me was how doing it at the same time every day, you just create that habit.
Yeah.
And then you just can't, if you miss a day, like, you really notice it. So to me now, I can't think of starting my day without doing my practice. And we make excuses for why we don't want to do it. But I don't know, it was Karuna or somebody said, they go, saying that you don't have time to do something means you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
So when it becomes a priority, and so your suggestions, I think, are spot on. Really.
Yeah.
So.
And it's kind of when we're talking about the obstacles to laziness, which we're defining as just not feeling like doing it, then when you start to feel the effects, then you're inspired, right? You get inspired by first the ideas about the benefits, and then the real inspiration comes, like you say, when you just start to really feel the benefit. And then if you have to miss a day, you're like, for me, I just feel so thrown off. Like if I have to miss, I mean, and then I always make the metaphor, it's kind of like leaving the house without brushing your teeth. Like you wouldn't even dream of doing that. And you wouldn't even dream of like going off to your day without meditating, and you really start to feel the beneficial effects of it. And then it becomes kind of self-perpetuating in this way. You don't have to, like, you've gotten over the hump. You don't have to be giving it a lot of thought. Not only is it habitual, but you feel the benefits and you wouldn't dream of skipping it. So, but that takes a while. That definitely takes a while.
And it does help too for people that have to work. I find, it's really beneficial to have a practice before I go to work,
Yeah.
because you just come in kind of zenned out instead of, 0 to 60 in 10 seconds. And it helps to really set the tone for your day.
Yeah.
Then those short little 5-minute meditations you do during the day are way more effective because you have that good basis of the morning.
Yeah.
Seems
Yeah.
like so.
Yeah, nice. And for the evening, our teacher Lama Yeshe, and I was reading once that he said, somebody was saying, oh, it's really hard to meditate when I get home from work. And they were doing this thing of like, oh, I get home from work and I, sit cross-legged and start to do this whole thing. And I'm just nodding off. And he goes, no. He goes, don't worry about that. He goes, just get home from work, make a cup of coffee, lie on your sofa and think about benefiting beings, like daydream about benefiting beings. Don't make this whole hard job of it, or you're not going to want to do it at all. He's like, just sort of lie there, rest, and kind of daydream about like how awesome it would be to benefit beings. And then later when you're refreshed, like do a short practice if you want to, so it's all about being kind. I think we can be so sort of, I don't know, we have that Protestant work ethic thing that really taints our beautiful Buddhist practice because we're like, oh, I should do, and it's just too much. So, yeah, Linda, did you have something? Yeah.
Just that I find it helpful to have something to read. I've been reading some Thich Nhat Hanh, something like that, just a paragraph or two before meditating.
Nice to
instead of
kind of inspire you.
Right.
Yeah. Sweet. That can be nice too. Yeah. And there's all those beautiful books of short quotes and inspirations, and you can really get those. And then that's part of getting over that laziness, isn't it? Because then you get excited about it.
Kind of like just the right thing will surface too that you need to think about that day, I find too.
Yeah. Good. Jenny, you've got your hand up, and then Michael.
The first, I think it was a silent retreat or meditation retreat that I did. I don't remember if it was 3 or 4 days, but at the very beginning of the retreat, they started with like, I'm going to say 10-minute meditations. And then there'd have a little break. And then, maybe there would be 3 10-minute meditations for a half an hour meditation. And then there might be some other activity, and then whatever, you would come back. And then maybe by evening or the next day, they were 15-minute meditations. And then, the next day they were maybe 20-minute meditations. But I find it helpful for me to do short meditations. So even if unless I'm doing a guided meditation, for me to have the meditation be short is like vital. Even if I were to think, okay, I'm going to meditate for an hour, I think for me, I would have to break it up like that. And I just find it to be really helpful.
Yeah, it is, for sure. And even if you're sitting, like you say, even if you're sitting for half an hour, divide it into little 10-minute increments. You don't have to get up and make a cup of tea every 10 minutes. Just stretch and relax your mind and look around and space out, and then go back again. But it gives your mind a break, so you're not sitting there just going, oh my God, half an hour, how am I going to do it? And even shorter. I was listening to a teaching by His Holiness the Dalai Lama the other day, and he was like, start with a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes is awesome. He's kind of like, forget about even 10 minutes, just start with like 1 or 2 minutes of focusing your mind. And so that was,
And what's so great about that is it has positive feedback. Instead of, I'm so awful, I'm terrible at meditating, I can't meditate for 20 minutes or 15 minutes. I'm like, I'm a total rock star. I can totally meditate for 3 minutes. Wow, I really nailed that,
Right. Exactly.
But I also wanted to say, Linda had mentioned Thich Nhat Hanh. And through some of the things that I've listened to of his, they have this tradition where they bang a gong every, hour. I don't know how often they do it at Plum Village, but it's something that we can do with our phones to have, even if either during your day where you just the way he was describing it in this particular thing I was listening to was when somebody bangs the gong, everybody just kind of becomes aware, focuses on the breath, maybe just for one breath even, you know, but just kind of brings you back to center. And even if it happens while you're meditating, I mean, unless we're very advanced meditators, we've probably wandered off the, you know, whatever our meditation object was for a moment. And so even to set those bells even during your meditation can be a helpful, warm kind of way to bring it back, you know.
Yeah, that can be. He has a monastery in Southern California, and I was there for a retreat one time, and everybody stops what they're doing. It's this huge gong, and they bang the gong. So even you're eating and you've got the fork like halfway to your mouth, and they bang the gong, and you're like for a minute, it's just bringing mindfulness to that moment. But it's so amazing because you realize how much your mind is off. Like even in the middle of eating, I wasn't present with eating. I was who knows where. So it's really kind of an amazing thing. So yeah, I know a lot of people who set their phone or their computer to have a chime that just kind of goes off periodically, and then they just stop and become present in that moment. So that's really helpful. Yeah.
Jenny, not to interrupt for Michael, but just to your point, Jenny, is that I was in a group meditation. I go to a group meditation, and when we were meditating in person, there was one of the guys that went that he would kind of have these distracting tics that he couldn't help, right? But so kind of causes a disturbance. And somehow I started saying, okay, every time like there's a little bit of a disturbance, I'm going to use that to remind me to like focus on my object of meditation. And it totally flipped that annoyance around, and it so helped me like start to focus. It was really great.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it. Great thought transformation. Well done, Dana. Great. Michael.
I liked yours. That was a good one.
Yeah.
No, but I say, you know, with what's going on now with Zoom and Skype and everything, I'm not an evening meditator usually, but it made me think of what Patrick said. A couple of us set up once or twice a week where we get together by Skype, and one person leads the meditation each day. So, and I found like, wow, I can actually do that because there's that group energy. Yeah. Where if I was by myself, I'd just be kind of zoning out, nodding off. But I found it's actually kind of a nice way. And you know, everybody's at home now. You know, nobody's out running around in the evenings. So set up a group with a couple of your friends, and it's sort of becoming this pretty cool thing. And then you can practice twice a day instead of once. So it's kind of nice.
Well, y'all have each other. You could just do an alumni group every Wednesday at 6:30. Use the same Zoom ID and keep meditating.
Or you could just keep leading us every Wednesday. I mean,
yeah, well, I could, or you could, Jenny. You got to pass it on eventually, right?
I also wonder if the group stuff, like, I don't know, at least with me, like if it's like a little bit of FOMO in addition to social pressure of the whole group's meeting. Oh, I gotta go. Something might happen that I'll miss. Like I'll miss this class with some interesting thing.
It's a kind of positive peer pressure, isn't it? It's like peer pressure for virtue. We should come up with a new word, and instead of FOMO, VOMO, virtue, missing out on virtue or something. Good, I like that. Okay, so what I want to do now is introduce a traditional structure. And again, this is very, very traditional kind of Buddhist structure. But even if you're not interested in doing traditional Buddhist meditation, there may be some of the kind of qualities of this that you'd like to, you know, sort of consolidate into your own daily practice. And what I'm going to introduce first is what we call, usually we call it the 6 preliminaries. The Tibetan word is jorcho, but not all of them are preliminary. 5 of them are before the main meditation, and 1 of them is after. So it's a way to prepare your mind to be able to meditate really well. So in the Tibetan tradition, instead of just kind of plopping down and going straight into meditation, we do some preliminary practices to get our mind kind of ready for the main meditation. It's kind of like what Linda just mentioned about, like the Thich Nhat Hanh quote that gets her mind inspired and ready for the meditation. And so when I presented it first, it's going to really seem like a lot, but the more you get used to doing these, the easier it becomes. And then you also really notice the effect on your mind of doing it. Now, some of these practices are kind of predicated on, you know, specific Buddhist practice, like the refuge practice that maybe some of you are not so familiar with or won't be comfortable, and that's fine. I'm just going to present it and you can adapt it yourself. So I'm going to share a slide, and then we're going to look at that practice that you got as a PDF. So the 6 preliminaries, and so this is even before, the first one is even before you sit down, cleaning the room and setting up an altar. And so this kind of relates to what we were talking about before, about wanting to have sort of a dedicated place to do your meditation practice, and you want it to be clean and neat. It doesn't mean you have to pull out the vacuum twice a day to, you know, vacuum, but just kind of neat. As one of my friends said, we're going to be inviting all of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and enlightened beings into this space to meditate with us. So just like you wouldn't have the Dalai Lama over for tea and have your laundry piled up in the corner, probably not, you know, so it's kind of creating an inviting kind of special place for your meditation, a separate part of the room for your practice. It doesn't need to be a whole extra, you know, room, but somewhere where you're going to be undisturbed, away from the TV, away from the computer, away from where the kids play, just a dedicated place. And then setting up an altar, and there's a very traditional way of setting up an altar. You've got some ideas about that in your handout, but you know, for me, it's mostly about pictures of my role models and people that inspire me, things that sort of uplift and inspire my mind. So for me, it's my spiritual teachers, it's Buddha images that I relate to, and you can make it very, very personal for you. Who's at one point, I don't have these pictures up right now, but at one point I had pictures of Mahatma Gandhi, Reverend Dr. King, plus all the Buddha figures, plus my own teachers, plus a couple of like hippie gurus I'd had when I was a hippie teenager. And so I had this very like, oh, and St. Francis and the Virgin of Guadalupe are always up there. So make it personal for you, those inspiring beings. And then making offerings. And so there's a traditional, in the Tibetan tradition, there's a tradition of making water bowl offerings that represent various things. And these things that are represented by the water bowls are in ancient India, when you had an honored guest, like somebody like a king, come to your house, there was a certain protocol of offerings that you made to that honored guest. And so the water bowl offerings are kind of based on this ancient Indian tradition of protocol of an honored guest. But again, you can either do this traditional way, or you can just offer whatever really speaks to you, whatever, you know, feels like a real offering to you. It's important to offer really nice things, not just your leftovers. If you make food offerings, offer the nicest things, the cookies you like the most and not the ones that you don't like very much, or a packet of something that somebody gave you that you don't like. So making offerings. And in the Buddhist tradition, we say, if you have a picture of a Buddha or a teacher, it's always important to have an offering and to relate to that image kind of within the context of an altar. For example, you know, people will buy some beautiful Buddhist art, one of these Tibetan painted scrolls, and just put it on their living room wall for decoration because they have a blank wall. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama had said, if you're a Buddhist practitioner, this is not so good. Those kind of images should only be used not as decoration, but only within the context of relating to them as that kind of holy object, if you're a Buddhist. Okay, so it's kind of important where these images are. So the first two are before you sit down, then you sit down, go into your 7-point posture. And then most of our practices start with a refuge prayer, and we'll look at that in just a moment. And refuge is the main practice. His Holiness the Dalai Lama says the practice that makes you a Buddhist is going for refuge. And the 3 objects of refuge are Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. And refuge is kind of a funny word that we don't use much in English. But we use the word refugee, and a refugee is a person who's going from a situation of danger to a situation of safety, right? And so when we take refuge, we're going from the dangerous situation of uncontrolled rebirth in cyclic existence to the safety of liberation and enlightenment. Okay, so that's what refuge means in Buddhism. And then we go for refuge in Buddha as the teacher of the path, the Dharma, the path, the spiritual path. And this is the main refuge because we have to do it ourselves. And then the Sangha, or the spiritual community that support us. These are the 3 objects of refuge, and we'll see them in a minute in the prayer. And then generating bodhicitta, and bodhicitta is the wish to get enlightened for the benefit of all beings. When we're doing our motivation at the beginning of each session, we generate that altruistic intention. May my practice benefit others as well. Through all of my meditation, my discussion, my practice, may I bring benefit to others as well. And bodhicitta is saying, may my enlightenment benefit all beings. In fact, that's the only reason I'm aspiring to full enlightenment, for the benefit of others. So I might be able to develop all of those enlightened qualities. And last week we did that meditation where we imagined some kind of enlightened being and imagine the enlightened qualities of compassion, wisdom, and power. So this is saying, yeah, may I transform into such a being for the benefit of all. And then the next step is what we call visualizing the merit field. And so in the practice that we're going to do today, it's the historical Buddha. We call the historical Buddha Shakyamuni Buddha. So that's a very, very simple visualization. Always nice to visualize some sort of enlightened being or role model. For some practices, it can be very, very elaborate. We're imagining a central figure surrounded by what we call the lineage masters or lineage gurus. Some of these visualizations are super elaborate. But for now, we're imagining the Buddha in the practice we're going to do tonight. And we imagine that not just as a historical figure, but as an example and sort of an embodiment of all of those qualities. That compassion, that wisdom, that power and ability, the kindness, the courage. So in a way, it's kind of creating a projection. It's creating this external projection of all of the qualities that we're really looking at developing ourselves. And then the next step is purifying obstacles and accumulating merit. And we're going to do this with a prayer called the 7 Limbs. And so purifying obstacles and accumulating merit is a big part of what our practice is as beginners. We say we purify the negativities in our minds, the negative karmic seeds, all of those obstacles that can prevent us from getting those realizations and developing those positive qualities. And then accumulating merit is accumulating that positive potential. One of my friends translates the Tibetan word that's usually translated merit because he says, well, it feels too much like the Boy Scouts and you're getting a merit badge. And he translates it as spiritual momentum. So we're trying to accumulate this energy or this spiritual momentum so that we'll have good results for our spiritual path. One of the metaphors given when we talk about purifying obstacles and accumulating merit, you know, when you think about doing a community garden in a vacant lot in a city, you don't just go out there and start tossing broccoli seeds around. First, you get all the rocks and broken glass and all of that out. That's like purifying the obstacles. And then you build up the soil. You add compost and you really build up the soil. And then when you plant the garden, something's going to happen. And our minds are exactly the same thing. So we do these practices to purify and accumulate merit. And I'll show you what those practices are in just a second. It's this 7-limb prayer that some of you might be familiar with. And then after all of that, we're ready for the main meditation. So all of those are the preliminaries. And then for the main meditation, we can do a single pointed concentration on the breath or the visualized image of the Buddha. We could do the compassion meditation that we did. We could do the visualization we did last week. We could do a meditation on impermanence. Any topic we can fit in to the main meditation there after our mind is really ready, right, to be kind of receptive and be able to generate those realizations. So then we do the main meditation, and then requesting the blessings and inspiration. And what we do in our practice, we don't just send the Buddha off and go, great, thanks for hanging out with me. We always do an exchange of energy, because the whole point of our Buddhist practice is to actually develop those qualities. So we always do some visualization. In the practice we're going to do tonight, we imagine that Buddha that we visualized in front of us coming up to the crown of our head and kind of melting into us. And then we imagine that we've generated all of those enlightened qualities of a Buddha. We never just leave the enlightened beings hanging out there. And in different practices, we do different exchange of energy with those enlightened beings. In some practices, there's some light coming from the heart of that enlightened being to us, and we get the energy that way. Sometimes they dissolve into us, either on the crown of our head or just kind of melt into us. So there's different variations depending on what practice you do. But there's always this step. And then we dedicate the positive energy. And we've been doing that at the end of our classes at the very end. So again, we'll go through this with that sample practice. And it seems like a lot, but you really notice the difference when you do these preliminaries before the main meditation. It really gets your mind in that place that's very receptive and ready for those realizations to come. So I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and you have this in your packet. I've forgotten what page it is now of the packet that you have, but you have a kind of 2 pages about even more details about this. So are there any questions before we go into our sample practice? Any questions about those? Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of lead you through the practice before we actually do the meditation. We're just going to look at the practice, then I'll give you a 2 or 3 minute break, and then I'll guide you through it. So we'll do it kind of 2 times. We'll look at the different components of it now, take a break, then we'll do the practice together, and then we'll have some time for final questions. So I'm going to share my screen again, and you should have gotten this. Let me see if I can find it. You should have gotten this as a PDF from Patrick last week, I think it was. So this is your packet that you should have gotten, a brief daily meditation practice. And I put this image on the front cover because this is exactly the visualization that we're going to be doing. So the first page of the written instructions is basically describing this picture. And so you can print this picture out and use it as an aid to your visualization practice. But this is the historical Buddha sitting cross-legged. You can see his right hand is touching that cushion that he's sitting on, and that's called the earth touching mudra. And there's a story about him, the earth kind of bearing witness to his enlightenment at the time of his enlightenment. And he's holding a bowl full of nectar of Amrita, the nectar of immortality, dressed in the robes of a monk. You can see the throne is held up by lions, and then there's a beautiful lotus cushion and a sun and a moon cushion. And he kind of has this aura that he's radiating. So the first thing that you do is visualize this. And so this is the first page of your practice at the level of your forehead. And so what we're doing is just creating an image in our mind's eye. The level of your forehead, about 2 meters in front of you, is this beautiful golden throne adorned with jewels, supported at each corner by a pair of snow lions. On the throne is the lotus, and on that are sun and full moon discs, and the sun and moon discs are lying flat like cushions. And then Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha, is seated on that. His body, we imagine his body not as flesh and blood and bone like an ordinary human body, but it's made of golden light. And he's incredibly beautiful. His gaze is peaceful. The palm of his right hand rests on his right knee with the middle finger touching the moon cushion, his left hand resting in his lap in the gesture of meditation. He's seated cross-legged, and there's light beams beaming out from his body. So that's the visualization, just like that picture. And when we visualize the Buddha, it's really important to not imagine him as flat, like two-dimensional, like a picture, or lifeless, like a statue, but a real living being. We imagine the Buddha's meditating with us. Now, it's said that if we have a personal teacher, for example, somebody like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, we imagine that teacher's energy in the aspect or the appearance of this Buddha figure. And so the reason that we're always meditating along with one of these enlightened beings in these Buddha figures is to really uplift our mind, to inspire us, to feel like the Buddha's there. In the description, he's looking at us, so pleased that we're doing this meditation practice, really encouraging us. And so it sort of uplifts our mind. And then the next step is refuge and bodhicitta. And we mentioned that just a second ago. So when we do this practice, we imagine that we're surrounded by other beings. So we're not just, this is a reminder that we're not just practicing for our own sake, but for the sake of others as well. So we say, around us are seated infinite sentient beings. Your mother's on your left, your father on your right, your friends and family behind you, people you find difficult in front, all other beings in human form behind you. And we imagine that we're leading them in practice. And so we imagine ourselves completely surrounded. And we're like in the monasteries, there's a chant master who leads the chanting. And so sometimes when you get these instructions, it says, imagine that you're the chant master leading all of these beings in the practice. And that attunes us to that responsibility and that connection that we have to all other beings, which also can be incredibly inspiring. And then we recite this verse 3 times. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And so thinking about the meaning of those verses, and then the 4 immeasurable thoughts. And these are the practices that have to do with loving and kindness and compassion. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. That's great compassion. The first one is great loving kindness. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. That's empathetic joy. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And that's the perfection of, or the immeasurable of equanimity. And then the 7 limbs, and this is the main practice for purification and accumulation of merit. The first limb is prostration. So reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. It doesn't mean you get up off the cushion and do a full-length prostration. And what prostration is about, you know, it's not this like weird Asian custom. It's really about generating a mind of humility and receptivity, right? So we think of wow, here's the Buddha in front of me, or the Dalai Lama in the aspect of the Buddha. We say in order to learn something, you have to have a humble mind and realize that the person has something to teach you. So this is just paying respect, right, to that enlightened being and generating that mind of respect. And then I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. And it's not that the Buddha needs our offerings, needs our little water bowls that are on our altar at all. But this is just about our minds generate so much positive, that kind of spiritual momentum by making offerings. And then we admit our negativities. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time. This is the limb of confession, which is just acknowledging our negativities as a way of purifying them, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. And so in addition to confessing, we're encouraged to rejoice in virtue and, really get excited about the positive things that we're doing, that ordinary beings are doing, and that holy beings like our teachers are doing. Then the next two are in relation to our spiritual teachers. And so we say that in order for our teachers to keep showing up for us, to keep guiding us life after life, we need to request them to stay. So please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. This is requesting our teachers to stay with us and keep teaching us. And then finally, the dedication. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. So what we'll do when we're doing the practice, we'll pause after each one of these lines. I'll read them out. You don't have to read them unless you want to follow along. And then we'll pause and meditate after each one of these lines, just so you get an idea of how the meditation works. And then the main meditation here, meditate on the stages of the path, single point of concentration, or a combination of the two. And then finally, visualize that the Buddha rises up in the air, becomes smaller, comes to the crown of your head, facing the same direction as you. He then melts into light, and this light absorbs into you. And you imagine that your body, speech, and mind become one with the Buddha's body, speech, and mind. And then you imagine light rays going out from your own body in all directions, purifying all of the negative karma of all those beings. Every being becomes a Buddha, and every place becomes a Buddha paradise. So this is visualizing the result of the path, right? So in Buddhist practice, we say we're practicing to become an enlightened being, just like the historical Buddha. So we're doing it through our visualization. We're imagining the result of the path. It hasn't happened yet. It's still just at the level of our imagination. But then we do the dedication prayer to dedicate all of that positive energy that we've generated towards that goal that we've just visualized. Okay, so this is kind of this very traditional structure of a meditation, and you might find different components that speak to you that you might like to try out. What we're going to do now, I'm going to 2 or 3 minute break to just kind of stretch, have a bio break, and then we'll come back and I'll lead you through the practice, guiding you through the visualizations that go along with it. So take a quick break and then we'll come back and do that practice together. I'll ring the bell when it's time to come back. Okay, and so I'll guide you through this practice, and I'm thinking what we'll do for the main meditation is just a brief version of the practice that we did last week, where we imagined from the holy being, light coming from the holy being's heart and filling us with wisdom, compassion, and power or ability. And so we'll just do a short version of that since we're working with the visualization of the Buddha. By the way, this visualization of the Buddha or a visualization of any kind of enlightened being, we can use as an object for developing our single-pointed concentration. We've been using the breath, the sensations of the breath in the body as an object. We can also use this kind of visualized image. And for some people, that works really well to develop their single-pointed concentration using a visual image. Okay, so I'll invite you to just get into your comfortable meditation posture with your back straight, whether you're in a chair, sitting down on a cushion, or maybe a sofa, your back straight, your shoulders even. Taking a moment to just check into your body and see if there's any tightness or tension has crept in, and just relaxing. Taking a few moments to really settle in and relaxing your body. And then sometimes when we talk about the posture, we say the 7-point posture, and then the 8th point is the breath. So we usually always start our practice with just a few moments of breath awareness. So just focusing on the breath in the body. And then visualizing at the level of your forehead, about 2 meters in front of you, is a large golden throne. It's beautifully adorned with jewels and supported at each corner by a pair of snow lions. And on top of the throne is a lotus, and then in a sun and moon cushions lying flat. And seated on top of the moon cushion is the Buddha, the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha. He's the manifestation of the enlightened mind and all enlightened qualities of all the Buddhas. And imagine his body is made of golden light, so not solid and made of flesh and blood and bone like ours, but made of golden light, very magnificent. He's wearing the 3 robes of a monk. He has a beautiful, loving smile. His eyes are long, narrow, and fine. His gaze is peaceful. And the palm of his right hand rests on his right knee, with the fingertips touching the moon cushion, and his left hand is held in his lap, holding a bowl of nectar. And his body is seated cross-legged on that cushion, and coming out from his body, there's light rays going in all directions, carrying numberless manifestations of the Buddha to benefit infinite sentient beings. So taking a moment to just visualize again the Buddha as a real living presence. If it's hard to get a visual image, you can imagine just kind of a felt sense of the Buddha's presence, maybe just a golden outline but a real living being, not flat like a painting or lifeless like a statue. And if you do have a spiritual teacher that you relate to, the Dalai Lama or another teacher, you can imagine their energy in the aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha. And then, because we're meditating not just for our sake, but for the sake of all living beings, we imagine around us is seated infinite sentient beings. Imagine your mother on your left, your mother of this life, whether she's passed away or not, your mother on your left, your father on your right, and your friends and family behind you. And we imagine people we struggle with, people we have difficulty with in front, because it's important not to leave them out of our visualization. We're practicing for their sake as well. And then imagine infinite living beings, all in human form, spreading out to the horizon. And that you're taking responsibility for all of these beings to lead them in practice. To really generate that sense of responsibility that you have, that love and compassion for all beings. And then we go for refuge and generate bodhicitta. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. And then for purification and accumulation of merit, we'll meditate on the 7 limbs. And so we'll pause after each line to do the meditation. So reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. And so just taking a moment to generate a real sense of respect, thinking of the Buddha that you visualized in front, thinking of all of those enlightened qualities, and really generating a mind of respect. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. And now imagine anything that would be an amazing offering in your mind, your favorite things, both things that you possess and anything that you can imagine. And we get an instruction that it's nice to kind of fill the whole sky with these amazing abundant offerings that we visualize offering to the Buddha. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time. So confession is part of purification, really acknowledging the negativities. So thinking of things that are habitual, or there might be some big negativity, or maybe something you've done recently. And really acknowledging and confessing. and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. And so by rejoicing, we think of the positive deeds of our own teachers and holy beings, of ordinary people, our friends, and of ourselves. And so this is a joyful practice of really rejoicing in virtue. So taking a moment to generate a sense of happiness and virtue, delighting in virtue. And then in order for our teachers to stay, keep teaching us, keep returning lifetime after lifetime, please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And so now with those preliminaries done, we'll do the main meditation, and you can do any style of meditation at this point, either single pointed concentration or any of those conceptual guided meditations. But what we'll do for now is do a meditation in relation to that visualization of the Buddha. So building that visualization up again in your mind, imagining the Buddha seated on that beautiful golden bejeweled throne, held up with snow lions, on that lotus sun and moon cushion, that beautiful body of golden light, wearing the 3 robes of a monk, his right hand touching the moon cushion, his left hand holding a begging bowl in his lap. And again, just kind of renewing that feeling of the Buddha there with you, so happy that you're meditating. All of those enlightened qualities, that enlightened compassion and wisdom and power. And now imagining that the light comes from the Buddha's heart. You can imagine it as a warm golden light coming from the Buddha's heart. And you can imagine it enters you. You can imagine it going straight into your heart and then your whole body filling with light. And first we'll imagine that that light is in the nature of great compassion, compassion for all living beings without exception. The same kind of compassion that those enlightened beings have, not dependent on any actions, but just that pure compassion. So imagine for a few moments that bright light that symbolizes compassion coming from the heart of the Buddha, filling you, your whole body and mind with the energy of great compassion. And then continuing to imagine that golden light coming from the heart of the Buddha. And this time imagine that it's wisdom, the wisdom that sees things exactly the way they exist, sees the ultimate nature of reality. Imagine that wisdom entering you, the antidote for all of your ignorance about how things exist, all of your confusion, bewilderment. So for a few moments, just imagining that bright light of wisdom coming from the heart of the Buddha. And then finally imagine that that bright light that comes from the heart of the Buddha is the essence of power, capacity, capability to benefit all living beings. And so it's not the kind of power that's power over, but it's the kind of power that's ability. So imagining that that gives you that strength, that power, that ability to work for the benefit of all living beings. Imagine that bright light filling you with perfect power. And now visualize that the Buddha rises up into the air, becoming smaller, and comes to the crown of your head, facing the same direction as you. And imagine that he melts into light, and this light absorbs into you. And your body, speech, and mind become one with Shakyamuni Buddha's holy body, speech, and mind. And then from the pores of your own body, which is now an aspect of Shakyamuni Buddha, imagine light rays are emitted towards all sentient beings in all directions. So all those beings that have been seated around you the whole time that you've been meditating, your mother on the left, your father on the right, your friends and family behind you, people you have difficulty with in front, and all other beings, all their negative karmas and obscurations of body, speech, and mind are all completely purified when they're touched by those light rays going out from your body. And imagine that in this way, all living beings become Buddhas. Every place that appears as a pure place. So we become an enlightened being at the level of our imagination, but we've created powerful causes for that result that we've just imagined. So now we'll dedicate the positive energy due to the merits of these virtuous actions. May I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel, bodhicitta, that is not arisen, arise and grow. And may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. So you'll notice if you engage in these kind of practices, especially in the Tibetan tradition, you'll notice no matter what the practice is, no matter what the enlightened being that you're visualizing, all of the same elements. There's always a visualization of some enlightened being, or it might be a more complex, kind of field of beings. There's the refuge in bodhicitta. There's the 7-limb prayer. There's the main meditation. There's always an absorption of energy. And again, it can be quite different for different practices. And then finally that dedication. And so now that you've kind of seen that basic structure, you'll be able to sort of identify it. Sometimes it's a lot more complex. That was just something that I created that's very simplified from some of the practices that you'll be seeing. But I wanted to open it up because that was a lot, and that was a lot of brand new stuff for many of you. So I wanted to offer the opportunity for any questions that you might have to clarify all of those traditional practices. So you can unmute or raise. Yeah, Dana, your hand's up.
So I kind of have some difficult, and this has happened before, of the visualization of the Buddha. And I don't know if it's a cultural thing or what, but and especially this time, the visualization of the throne. And I tried to kind of tweak it a little bit, because to me, like a really comfortable throne seems like very like lavish and high, as opposed to like, I don't know, a golden throne with lots of jewels. It just seems very counter to a lot of the Buddhist principles. And I wonder if you
Yeah, and it's right. And it, because the Buddha basically like sat on a rag under a tree. I mean, for real, like that was what was really happening. But again, it's just about our mind creating it as beautiful as possible. Like when our teachers, like the way it works when our teachers come, I mean, they don't care. The Dalai Lama would stay in the Motel 6. He wouldn't have any problem at all, but we would never put him there. It's more about us wanting to offer the nicest, most respectful thing. So it's not about them. It's more about, wow, we want to make it as nice as possible. I mean, when our teachers come to Land of Medicine Buddha, we try and, we have got these like special dishes and cook special food. And, again, it's not for them. It's not that they could care less at all, but it's just about kind of, showing a lot of respect. So, just in the same way, like I said, if you were going to have the Dalai Lama over to your house, you wouldn't just like open a container from Trader Joe's and give him a spoon and shove it in his face. You'd like make it nice. And so it's kind of like that, it's more for our minds. But I totally get what you're saying. But when you kind of think, oh, I want to prepare this nice place because I'm actually inviting the Buddha to come hang out with me and meditate, I'm not going to just shove him in the corner. I want to, and then also for a lot of the visualizations, and we didn't have time to go into it, the different aspects symbolize different things. So when you get more into it, like the lotus, sun, and moon, all symbolize different aspects of the path. So it's kind of cool when you're doing the visualization, you're meant to also be thinking about what all of those things symbolize, and then it's even more powerful for the mind. Yeah, but it's really about us and not about them. I had a friend, and her dad was the president of the Four Seasons hotel chain worldwide, which is like this super fancy hotels. So she was a Buddhist, and her mom, his ex-wife, was actually a nun. And so whenever the Dalai Lama would come someplace, of course they put him in the best suite at the Four Seasons Hotel. Not, again, that he cared at all, but it was just about making a really nice offering for him. Yeah. Thank you though, because that qualm can come up in our minds. Yeah. Anything else? Other questions or comments about that?
Venerable, there's a couple from the chat.
Yeah.
Susan is asking if there's a significance to the color gold compared to blue and in the Medicine Buddha. Does it matter which color we choose?
Yeah. And the different enlightened beings have different colors. Like Tara is this green color. The female Buddha Tara is a green color. And there is symbolism. This sort of sapphire blue of the medicine Buddha is some sort of energy of healing. So there is like a thing about the different colors of the different enlightened beings. You know, for the historical Buddha, we do usually visualize him as this kind of golden light color, whereas we could substitute the medicine Buddha in the same way, or the Buddha Tara, and then we'd visualize that green color, and it relates to the Buddha families. I mean, there's a whole kind of teaching about that, but yeah, the different colors do have different significance.
Paul is asking, do the dedication prayers come after the meditation, or is it part of the meditation?
Yeah, so it's part of the 7 limbs. In this one, we kind of did it twice. We did it as the 7th of the 7 limbs, but then we did the more extensive dedications at the very end of the practice, the 2-verse one, and then we just did the 1-line one. But we could have left the 1-line one out of the 7 and just done it at the end. We didn't have to do it twice. Yeah, so it really kind of comes at the very end of the entire practice, but it is considered one of the 7 limbs. Yeah, good question. Yeah.
And then there's one from Edward. Is it okay to see other spiritual images instead of the Buddha?
Yeah,
Example.
totally. Like I said, you know, what I'm introducing to you is very, very traditional Buddhist, and you can adapt it. You know, if there's other holy beings that you relate to more. I have a friend who loves meditation, and she's a really devout Christian, and so she visualizes Jesus, and instead of refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, she does a prayer from her own tradition. So yeah, you can definitely adapt it. I mean, that's why it's interesting to kind of understand, you know, the idea of the inspiring being, the idea of purification and accumulation of merit, and then you can definitely adapt this very traditional Buddhist practice to whatever feels right for you, you know, and be creative about it for sure. Yeah. Anything else, Patrick, or was that it from the...
Maria's asking about the self-compassion class. I'm not sure, Maria. There's a compassion cultivation training happening starting in September that Venerable Tenzin Chogkyi is teaching, but I'm not sure about a self-compassion class.
Yeah, and that one has self-compassion in it, but it's not a full class on self-compassion per se. It's got 2 weeks worth of self-compassion in an 8-week training. Yeah. Anybody? I
had a question about when you're dissolving the Buddha through the crown. I heard you say emanate that aspect of the Buddha out. But it made me think, when that light is coming down and filling me, am I still visual seeing myself as Patrick with aspects of
Yeah,
Chogkyi?
no. So you take on the aspect of the Buddha and then send out light rays from your body as the Buddha. So
Okay.
the Buddha's at the crown of your head, dissolves into light. That light melts into you through your crown. And then you imagine yourself transforming into the Buddha, and then sending the light rays out from, now your body is the enlightened body, and from the pores of your body, the light rays are going out.
Okay, I didn't transform myself into the Buddha. I was just like, the light was coming out.
Patrick?
Okay, I'm learning.
Because it's like visualizing the result of what the practice is all about. It's like this powerful way that we're kind of, you know, it's like the whole reason we're doing this practice is from a Buddhist standpoint is to transform into a fully enlightened being. So it's a way of imagining that, imagining the benefit, because then with those light rays going up from our body are touching all of those beings and enlightening them. So it's a way through a brief visualization of imagining like the whole result of the path, and then dedicating the merit, going, yeah, that's what I just imagined is what I'm dedicating all this positive energy towards that goal.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
I just had a question about the offering part.
Yes.
Sometimes I think I spend too much time on that, but I was just wondering what you thought about, like, the more elaborate you make the mental offerings, somehow it seems like it spurs the quality of generosity.
Oh,
It-
totally.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And
yeah.
that's the point of offering. Again, it's kind of like the golden throne. The Buddha doesn't need our stuff, like, really, right? And he doesn't need a sky full of like chocolate cake or whatever it is. We're imagining like these abundant, extravagant things, but it, it's just for us, excuse me, and it does counteract that miserliness, that mind, and kind of that mind of grasping and miserliness. So when we do it as abundantly as possible, and in the prayer it says actual and imagined. And I learned this from my friend, Venerable Amy Miller, when I first met her, and neither one of us were ordained, and it was 30 years ago. And she goes, she had heard from one of her teachers, oh, when you're walking around and you see like a garden full of flowers or a beautiful sunset, in that moment, just stop and offer it to the Buddhas. Like you're just going around and you just see something amazing and beautiful, like in that moment. So it's not something you own, or even just, things that nobody owns, like a beautiful scenery or sunset or mountain or the beach or whatever. So it's kind of cool. You can be creative in it. And every time you do it, yeah, it counteracts our grasping kind of miserly mind and gives us an imprint of just being generous. So it's fun to be creative. And again, not to get too hung up in like, will the Buddha want this or not? I don't know. Does he like sunsets? I'm not sure. Just go for it. Anything you enjoy, the Buddha will probably like it too, right? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Jenny.
This was great. Do you think we could do this again?
Well, we can't do it next Wednesday night because Venerable Rabina is teaching next Wednesday night, but maybe we could have some kind of alumni situation. We'll have to see. Or you guys can use a Zoom link and like have an alumni class. You could get in touch with Patrick about that, and then you could lead the class.
Maybe you could lead the first one, like 2 weeks from now could be like our first alumni one. And because you don't start yours for 3 weeks.
Have you guys noticed what a bully she is? I just want to make this, Matthew knows this.
I'm just full of good ideas,
She's an attorney. She can't help it.
6 weeks isn't enough. We need one more.
Okay,
right?
if you're in favor of having this group meet again with Venerable Tenzin leading it in 2 weeks, just for a bonus class, raise your hand.
Oh, yeah.
No pressure, man.
Wow. She's really good. She's good. Yeah, I would have hated to be the prosecutor when you were or however that worked, man. That would be tough. All right, we'll see what we can do. Patrick's got the list. And so I see the hands being raised. We'll see what we can do. Because yeah, it was a lot to just do once together. So we'll look at the schedule and try for another Wednesday. Yeah. All right. We're over time. It's 1 minute after 8. So thank you all so much for your attention during this 6 weeks. And yeah,
Thank you.
see if we can organize an alumni class. And there's a ton of other stuff going on coming up. Thank you. And you can unmute yourself and say goodbye to your classmates.
See you later.
Bye. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Venerable Tenzin.
Thank you, Venerable.
Very powerful experience. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.